Hey everybody, how you doing? Swordmaster Chef Tekking here to talk about our favorite pairing in all of One Piece, Zoro x Sanji, and that could not be taken into a different context. I'm clearly talking about the rivalry, the sort of like brotherly bond, like I hate you but I love you kind of thing. That's the interesting bond between them, and that's something that we just love. Okay, so have you ever like met somebody that just has green hair and is full of muscles and you just like despise them to your core? And have you also met a guy that has like an eyebrow that just makes you hate existence and you're just at each other's throats, right? Well, that's a wacky scenario, but then you find yourself on the same pirate crew and you just gotta get along. It's like, okay, well, last chapter of One Piece, we had the epic reunion between Zoro and Sanji. They have not seen each other in years. Like, not years in the context of One Piece, but years in, like, the context of the manga. Like, us reading it, years. It was in Dressrosa the last time they saw each other, and then Sanji ran off to Zoe with Nami and Chopper and Brook, and then Zoro and everybody had to go to Zoe afterwards, but Sanji was already gone, and then they went to Totland, and everybody got reunited at Wano, except Zoro got lost at the last second, so he still didn't meet Sanji. You could at least tell that Oda, we haven't had that big epic reunion yet with all the Straw Hats. We still haven't had that. It's probably going to happen at some point coming up, I would hope, after Luffy breaks out and everybody, reunites at wherever the new hideout is. That's when all the Straw Hats are like, holy crap, we're all together again. That seemed like it took forever. I would love for Usopp or Frankie or somebody in the background to be like, it felt like we've been gone for like years. I'm like, yeah, it has. It really has, right? Yeah, the Zoro and Sanji reunion last chapter, that's definitely a big moment. It's going to lead into some bigger things, I hope, anyway. Not the least of which being, and this was something that was actually brought up in the last Reverie stream, but how Zoro is exactly going to feel about Sanji leaving the crew and then going to Totland and everything. I mean, he had a reason to. It's not like he just went because he felt like it. But considering how Zoro reacted when Usopp left and everything, I'm curious of how Zoro is going to treat Sanji in that perspective there. But before we get to that, I just wanted to talk about their kind of relationship they have, okay? Because it adds a little bit of flavor, of spice, so to speak, to the Straw Hat group dynamic, because most of the time the Straw Hats, they all get along with each other, right? I mean, there's always like, Nami and Sanji, like, oh, Sanji's this lovesick guy always trying to curry favor with Nami, and Nami doesn't hate him, but a lot of times it's just like, okay, you're annoying, please leave now. But you can tell they're still friends and that kind of stuff. A lot of the other Straw Hats, like Usopp gets along with Luffy. Luffy gets along with pretty much everybody. Robin is a little bit more distant, but okay. Frankie and Usopp and Chopper get along. Brook gets along with everybody, But then you get Zoro and Sanji, okay? And they have this sort of like rivalry against each other where they're always kind of like insulting each other, and you can see when it's just those two, when it's like they're stuck together either in a fight or just walking around town and they end up, together. It's just, they just bicker and argue like an old married couple constantly. Like, yeah, what'd you say, freaking Marimo head? Yeah, you heard what I said, freaking eyebrow dartboard guy. I have a sword. It's like, I have a foot. Is guess where I could shove it? That kind of thing. Now, I went back. Do you know where the famous Sanji and Zoro relationship started? Because they didn't always act that way between each other like the first time they met. It wasn't like as soon as Zoro arrived at the Baratier and laid eyes upon Sanji, bussing tables, he was instantly filled with like, I think I could spend the rest of my life bickering with that glorious blonde man right there. Now, it wasn't like that. They were a little snarky with each other throughout the East Blue, a little bit sarcastic, like whenever Sanji would act all lovesick toward Nami or Nojiko or somebody else, Zoro would just be like, would you freaking just act like serious for a minute and stop acting like such an idiot? This is a big deal here. We're taking on fishmen and all that stuff. So they would argue that way, but it wasn't like cemented really in yet as like they're at each other's throats and that's going to be like a running gag. It actually started, and this is great, it actually started during Little Garden, okay? Because when they arrive at Little Garden, one of the first things they do is after they see the entire island is like this mass jungle, I don't think they're all aware that there are dinosaurs yet, but Zoro and Sanji are like, let's have a hunting contest to see who can get the largest, catch, right? And so then they go into the woods, and I think Sanji catches like an Allosaurus, and Zoro finds a Triceratops, and he's like, oh, you use three-sword style too. You also are a Santoryu wielder. Let us see what you can do here, Triceratops. Joro. And so, they end up capturing both of these dinosaurs. They bring them back to the Sunny at the end of the arc after the whole thing with Mr. 3 and the giants or everything are solved. And they can't really agree on which catch is bigger. It's like, well, mine clearly has more girth. He's like, yes, but mine is longer. Length means nothing, you fool. Then meanwhile, Nami's on the ship. He's like, would you two idiots just cut up the meat and bring it? We can't even bring both of these things. They're both huge. Bring some meat. Let's get out of the scary death dinosaur forest before we get devoured, okay? Please. Before Megalodon pops out of the ocean and just swallows our ship whole, can we get moving, please? And from that moment onwards, they never really resolved the hunting contest because, like, every arc after that, there's always a moment between the two where they're bickering and arguing, and this just builds and builds and builds until the point where it just became a running gag that Oda just does now. And the funniest thing to me about all of this is it mirrored Dory and Broggy's relationship on Little Garden, because what happened was 100 years ago, Dory and Broggy arrived there and they caught these two sea kings each and they laid them out on Little Garden. They're like, which one is bigger? And then they got into an argument over that and they started fighting. And it's been 100 years now, and both Dory and Broggy have long since forgotten what the fight was even about. It's just their daily routine now to just brawl, right? Just to show that just like an insignificant little thing can affect you for like, decades, or in Dory and Broggy's case, a solid century, right? And it's the same thing with Zoro and Sanji, the same exact thing. And if someone went up to Zoro and Sanji, like right now in the context of the story, like in Wano, like if Kinemon or somebody walked up to Zoro and Sanji and is like, why do you like dislike each other so much? Why are you always at each other's throats? Like, what happened in your past to cause this? Zoro and Sanji would probably be drawing a blank, honestly. They'd just be like, well, let me tell you something, Kinemon. This asshole right here, well, the day I laid eyes on him, like, they probably wouldn't be able to remember. It would just be kind of the same deal with Dory and Broggy. It's like, they've long since forgotten what they were fighting about. Zoro and Sanji, it's been 2 years now. They're just like, I don't know why it is. I just look at him and I just have this urge to just bicker with him for hours on end. It's just a pastime. It's a hobby at this point. Now, they don't hate each other, okay? So let's not go that far with it. It's kind of like, all right, we've all had, like, maybe, groups of friends throughout our lives. You probably had a group of friends when you were, like, in elementary school or middle school. Maybe a different group of friends when you were in high school. Yet another group of friends when you were in college. You go throughout friends throughout your life, That's just the sad thing is people move away and stuff and you grow apart or whatever. But, throughout your life, you've probably had at least the one friend that's sort of, like, maybe not, like, really truly your friend, like, you would never call them when you were really, like, in need of something, but at the same time, it's like, if you were hanging over the edge of a cliff about to fall, they wouldn't let you fall to your death, it's like, alright, come on, I'll pull you up, that's more the relationship between Zoro and Sanji. It's just like, alright, we're on the same crew, we're Nakama, we're family, we can, like, bicker and argue and stuff, but at the end of the day, we're here for the same reason. Luffy brought us together. We're part of the Straw Hat crew. Zoro's trying to be the greatest swordsman in the world. Sanji's trying to be, well, not just the, well, I guess in conjunction with finding the All Blue, he's also just generally trying to become the greatest chef ever, because if he finds the All Blue, then he would have access to all these fish and stuff and make dishes that you would ever, I mean, he already made a cake that basically made Big Mom have an orgasm, and so if you accomplish that feat, Sanji, you're kind of already the greatest chef in the world, right? So, yeah, they respect each other's dreams, and they respect one another, it's not like they just have this visceral hatred for each other, like, Sanji's asleep in his bed at night, like, Nami-chan, Robin-san, and then Zoro is just, like, creeping in next to him with his sword and just gotta end it and all my problems will be taken care of right here. One swing of the sword. We'll just say it was an accident. We'll just say, he wakes up the next morning and then Sanji's all bloody on the freaking ground of the barracks of the Sunny and like, what happened? It's like, oh yeah, he must have thought he must have been sleepwalking and thought Nami was my Shusui, and then he grabbed it and he started humping my Shusui, and well, you know what happened after that. It's an accident, right? No. We're not talking that level of, like, rivalry, hatred sort of deal, right? And so, honestly, the best scene to illustrate this point was when, at Thriller Bark. We all remember the famous scene at Thriller Bark, right? We all remember the sacrifice that Zoro laid out, right? Well, few people remember that Zoro, he wasn't the only contender there. Sanji also stood up. All right. And by the way, it wasn't like he decided to chicken out at the last minute or anything, okay? Zoro laid himself kind of prostrate in front of Kuma and is like, I will give up my life for Luffy's because that's how much I believe in his dream as the king of the pirates. I'm willing to lay my life on the line. I'm willing to let my dream end for Luffy. Sanji gets back up, and he basically offers the same thing to Kuma. You have to remember that. Sanji gets up, and he's just like, yeah, I know I'm not that big of a deal in the world government's eyes. I know I'm not as threatening as freaking Marimo over here, but I also care about my captain, and I will lay down my life on the line. And he has this moment where he's, like, looking at Kuma, but he's also talking to, like, Zoro behind him, and he's just like, hey, Marimo face or whatever. Make sure you guys find a new cook and everything. And then Zoro just takes out his sword and just BAM! Slams it right into the side of Sanji's body and just drops him and knocks him back out. And then, Zoro's like, alright, so, as we were saying. But okay, like, first off, that shows right there that, Zoro is not doing this just to be like, oh, no, I want to sacrifice myself for Luffy. No, I want to sacrifice myself for Luffy. No, it's none of that petty drivel or anything. It's just like, Zoro does not want Sanji to sacrifice himself there. All right. Now, you could throw that for any number of things. You could say it was, they need a cook. They need a chef to get into their journey. It would be much more of a loss if you died than I died or whatever. But Zoro did not want Sanji to die. All right. And he's just like, no, you're not doing this. Okay. Like, listen, I'll take care of this, all right? And he just knocks him out. Maybe it's seniority. Maybe it's kind of like, listen, I've been on the crew longer than you. If anybody's gonna have to sacrifice themselves for Luffy, it should be me first. I like kind of like how like a senior member would either defend a junior member, sort of like a kind of deal. Just like I'm the senpai. I'll take responsibility for my junior's actions. That kind of thing. So it's just like, no, you're not sacrificing yourself, and he knocks him out. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you could always say it's just like, no, screw you. I was here first. I'm sacrificing myself first, idiot, and knocks him out. But I don't think it was anything like that. I think it was more of just like Zoro accepting the mantle, accepting the responsibility of everything, and just like, Sanji, just shut up, okay? I'm gonna take care of this. You guys will be okay. They need a chef. You need a captain. I'll do what I have to do to make sure that it's okay. Kind of like I'm the first mate of this crew. All right, and I care about the Straw Hat Pirates and everything, and I care all about you as Nakama and everything. I don't want anybody to die, but if this is what we have to do, then I'll put my life on the line for that, okay? So yeah, just remember that, like Sanji, he was offering himself up the same amount there, and there was like a moment there between the two of them where they're like, and after Sanji woke back up, Sanji was the one that found Zoro all bloody on the side of the island, just blood everywhere, and Sanji's like, what happened to you? And Zoro's like, nothing. Just nothing at all. And then I imagine he just fainted, but he just like, nothing at all. And he just dropped like that, right? So, and Sanji, he doesn't tell the rest of the crew. He doesn't inform them about what actually happened. I think actually the Risky brothers went up to Sanji afterwards, and it's like, we saw everything! And I think so did Brook, and so did Robin. Robin was listening in on the conversation show. Robin and Brook both also know what Zoro did. But yeah, the Risky brothers go up to Sanji afterwards. It's like, we gotta tell everybody how badass Zoro was! And Sanji's like, you're not gonna say a word. Okay, because he did not do this to be praised. He did not do this so Luffy could bow at his feet like, thank you so much for saving my life, Zoro. I'll always be indebted. No, Zoro would not want that. Zoro would not want Luffy to, feel that indebted to him. So just keep him in the dark. That's what Zoro wants. Once again, if Sanji really just despised Zoro, he would just, he wouldn't care about his wishes. But he does. Okay, so, yeah, that's kind of more the relationship there when it gets into the more the serious tones, all right? And that's the thing. It's just like, yeah, there's comedic aspects of this with One Piece, characters that joke around with each other, but then there's like a more serious kind of like, all right, we're not bickering, we're not just arguing about something stupid like who killed the larger dinosaur or whatever. This is a serious matter, between men and stuff, and this is going against his wishes, and if you told Luffy, that would be a great disrespect to Zoro, so just don't do it, that kind of stuff, all right? But it's still funny to hear them argue all the time, especially after the time skip. They've been separated for 2 years. They've been separated longer than they've been a crew. And when they still get back together, there's still that cynicism kind of between them. Like when Zoro is, he goes on that fishing boat and he ends up getting on the pirate ship and he gets under the water. And then Sanji's looking for him at the market. And he's like, hey, do you know where my friend is? Well, friend is kind of a stretch, but, you know, he has green hair and he carries swords and he has like a belly warmer. You know where that guy is? Like, yeah, he got on a pirate ship. And he's like, oh, all right, well, that's, I guess he'll be a Fishman Island when we get there then. Not a big deal. You know, not a big deal, don't care. And then Zoro gets back up, slices a galleon in half, and then they have that moment where they're walking around Sabaody together. But they eventually end up where Luffy is in the Lawless area, and they fight and defeat a pacifista. That was a pretty epic scene when Zoro and Sanji, like, they rush that pacifista, and Zoro slices it, and Sanji, like, breaks its neck, and they're like, holy crap, we actually beat this thing in one hit, essentially, and dropped it. And then Luffy, you know, used Haki Gear second and then dropped another one just to prove how stronger they've gotten over the 2 years. So that was a pretty good scene there as well. Moving on now to where we're at right now, just in Wano. Okay, so last chapter, they were all around the plaza there right after Yasue got executed. Otoko rushes in. She's like, Daddy, Daddy! Oh my god, I'm so sad I could cry, but I can't because I can't. But Daddy! You know, he's like, I'll laugh enough to make you come back to life. Is that how this works? No, but, and so Orochi sees her and, you know, he, you know, puts her in his sights with the rifle and everything. Like, he's like, ah, little girl, you're going down. Sword rifle. You know, it's Wano. They should have sword rifles. You know, that's a thing that should exist. It fires swords. You know, that's the ultimate weapon in manga and anime. But then Zoro and Sanji, they rush in. They break the little partisan fence thing. And then, you know, Zoro grabs Otoko and shields her. And then Sanji just goes Diablo Jambe and just whoosh. And then they're just like, you know, like the whole crowd is like, it's Zoro, Juro, and Sangoro to save the day. And then they just kind of look at each other. And that's where the chapter ends. Okay? So, like I said in the chapter, I do think the whole Totland thing has to be addressed. I hope it's not addressed in just, like, a mild, like an argument. You know, like, they like right at the moment, they have to save Otoko. They have to make sure she gets out of there, and they have to try to take out Orochi if they can. They're probably not going to succeed, but they have to at least try. Like, they're right there. Like, Orochi's dancing around like a moron right in front of them in the wide open courtyard here. You know, Zoro has a sword. He has flying attacks. You know, just, you gotta at least take a shot out on him. Probably one of the Onibawan are probably gonna block it at the last minute, but you got to at least try, you know. So after all that's over, said and done, they manage to escape. They get back to their hideout and they're waiting there. I can imagine, you know, then they start bickering with each other. It's just like, how come you didn't aim higher than that? It would have worked. It's like, I don't care. How about, well, you have Mr. Light my freaking foot on fire. Why didn't you just try to light him on fire? That would have worked, huh? And they start arguing back and forth. And I hope it's not just like, yeah, well, at least I didn't run off to freaking Candyland and leaving everybody dry. It's like, yeah, well, I had to. And then that's all where the argument ends right there. It's just kind of like an offhand thing. Now, the exact opposite of that, I hope it doesn't, like, you know, it doesn't have to bog down the story to a certain extent. There are people that actually think, like, it's like, oh, well, Zoro might actually leave the crew in Wano, and this might be one of the reasons for it. Yeah, I don't see that happening. I just simply don't. I don't see any of the core member of the Straw Hat crew, like, dying or leaving. I just don't. I mean, is it possible? I mean, Oda might always have a way to, like, show us, like, a big turn of events. Like, oh yeah, you never thought this was gonna be coming, but, you know, all of a sudden, Zoro leaves. It's like, what? It's like, I mean, if he's gonna do it, it has to be built up in a very good way. Like, if Zoro was gonna have to leave, like, it was gonna have to be established, like, right now in Wano, and Wano is still, we got a lot of Wano left, guys. There's a lot of the arc left. Like, if we start to establish it and build it up now, and it just kind of tension builds throughout the arc, if it's done in a certain way, maybe it could work. But I just don't see it. I just don't see him leaving or anything like that. But I could see them, you know, getting into an argument and maybe just being on worse terms than they've ever been, sort of deal, right? And that kind of makes the whole reunion with all the Straw Hats sort of bittersweet. Well, I guess I can't really say a reunion with all the Straw Hats because technically Jinbei, you know, but he's still off in parts unknown. He's in the Twilight Zone. He's trapped in this just void. He's like, do 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 do. Can I be a Straw Hat yet? No. Do 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 do. dude. So yeah, that's unfortunately the case with Jinbei. But you know, when it comes to just Zoro and Sanji teaming up, I mean, like, they're the monster trio when Luffy is included, but if you just take out Luffy and you have Zoro and Sanji, they team up. They're pretty good at fighting together, honestly, despite their, like, constant bickering, and if you put their power together, they can definitely take out some pretty strong opponents. So there's also that as well. It's actually kind of, it reminds me of, like, the Yugi and Kaiba relationship, you know, in a little bit, except, like, there was that scene in the Abridged series when they're dueling darts, and they're just like, hey, Kaiba, you want to use those moves that we practiced at your place? So even though it's just like, yeah, they hate each other on the surface, but behind the scenes, they're like besties. That would be kind of funny with Zoro and Sanji. Like, they're bickering at each other all day on the sun. He's like, screw you, cook, I don't even like your food. He's like, yeah, well, your swords are stupid. And then later that night, when everyone's asleep, they just walk out on the sunny, and they're just like, okay, you want to practice? Like, yeah, let's practice. And they just start, like, sparring together, working on, like, combination attacks. You're just like, okay, here's what I'll do. I'll pull out my sword, and then you light your foot on fire, and then you light my sword on fire, then we'll do, like, a ZXX combo attack or something, like, and they work on that. That'd be pretty funny, right? If the Straw Hats ever hung out on the Sunny that much, which they haven't really had a lot of opportunities for recently. You know what I mean? Where is the Sunny at right now? Oh, it's in a cove. Yeah, it's like on this random cove in Wano. It's just hiding in a cave. So just hopefully no one will stumble upon the Sunny throughout this arc. Yeah. But yeah, what do you guys think? What do you think is going to be the culmination of this? You know, like, because I can see it, like, with One Piece, like, I could see the series ending, like, Luffy becoming the Pirate King and everybody realizing their dreams, and, like, well into their old age, like, well, when Zoro and Sanji are, like, in their 60s or 70s, they're still bickering with each other like old men, or they have kids or grandkids, and the grandkids also bicker with each other. Like, it's this perpetual thing. Kind of like how Dory and Broggy have been fighting for a solid century because they're giants, they can live longer. It's like with Zoro and Sanji, their children will continuously hate each other forever, like, in an also perpetual, like, circle. You know, like, so do you see that happening? Or, second option, do you see them, like, rectifying their differences at one point? You know, not just for the sake of a fight, not just for the sake of just like, all right, well, we're facing off against a giant, you know, dragon guy right now. You and I should probably put the bickering aside for the moment so we can work together and try to wipe this guy out. Not talking about just like for the moment here, but I'm talking about just like they actually bury the hatchet, or they bury the Shusui at one point. You know, they just like, okay, all right, you know what? I still hate your freaking eyebrow. And he's like, well, I still hate your hair. He's like, but, you want to be bros? I'm like, yeah, we'll be full-time bros. That doesn't sound as bad as it is. We're full-time bros. And they just do a fist bump, and they're just like, all right, we're buds now, okay? And I don't see that going down. I still think that it's like an endearing kind of thing that they have with each other. So they're just gonna keep that up for the rest of their lives. You know, I could see him as old man on the freaking porch, you know, and like it's Zoro with his grandson or whatever, and they're just living in the country now. They just retired, you know, and Zoro's using his katana as like a cane, and you know, he's just sitting there with his grandson. And then Sanji, he's old, and he's walking down the road with his grandson. He's like, hey, you stupid cock, what are you doing? Get off my yard. He's like, yeah, you freaking swordsman, I tell you what, this is gonna be the day where I best, oh, my hip. You know, that would be pretty funny. That would be pretty good there. But, you know, just going into more detail about the Totland thing, all right? If you think that's not a big... I used to think that wasn't a big deal. I didn't even consider it until the Rivalry stream. When it got brought up, I started thinking about it, and I'm like, well, you know, when Usopp left the crew, it was not something that was played for laughs. Certainly not. Now, when Robin left, different story. Robin was basically forced to leave. Alright, Robin was with everything with CP9 and everything, and she left to try to protect the crew. That's why Robin left. Okay, even also the same thing with Nami. Nami left also because, you know, Arlong and everything, and, you know, she just wanted to distance herself from the Straw Hats as much as possible so Arlong wouldn't, you know, kill them and stuff. There was even that scene during Arlong Park in the dub that I remember where Zoro, when he thinks he finds out about Nami's true colors and everything, like, Zoro calls her a bitch or whatever. So it's like, whenever whenever there's somebody in the Straw Hats that leaves the Straw Hats for, it's seemingly selfish reasons, Zoro's always the one that kind of takes immediate umbrage with that. Zoro's always the one that's just like, how dare you betray us and stuff like that. This is serious business here. So Usopp did not have to leave. He wasn't forced to leave. They gave him an ultimatum, like, well, he's like, hey, we're getting a new boat. And he's like, Usopp's like, I don't want to get a new boat. I want to stay the Mary. And it's like, okay, well, then it's either you stay and you listen to Luffy or you leave. And they had the fight, and that fight was one of the best fights in One Piece, and Zoro was just sitting there just being all serious and stuff. Chopper's freaking out in the background like, no, why do you have to fight? And Zoro's like, if just go back inside if it's bothering you this much. All right, so after it all goes down, though, and at the end of Enies Lobby, when, they're thinking about welcoming, like, what happens when Usopp, like, comes crawling back? Like, what do we do? And, Zoro goes up to Luffy and is like, hey, you cannot just let him back on the crew. You understand that, right? After all the crap, he fought you, for God's sake. Okay, you are supposed to be his captain, and he basically committed mutiny by challenging you and fighting you. Now, if he comes back, and he lays prostrate, and he apologizes, and he's like, I'm sorry for acting like, the way I acted. I'm sorry for attacking you. I'm sorry for being difficult. I'm sorry. Could you please let me back on your crew? If he does that, then okay, you can let him back on if he accepted what he did was wrong and he wants to come back that way. But if he comes back and he tries to play it off like a joke, or if he's just like, hey guys, it's been funny, weird, I had some crazy adventures while I've been gone. Anyway, let me tell you all about them. Just let me walk on board the sun. If he tries to do that shit and just play it off like we're just not going to treat it like a big deal, you can't invite him back on. And if you do, I'm going to leave. And so then you have Sanji. Okay, now Sanji, he didn't really specifically, he didn't specify exactly in his letter why he left. He was basically just like, hey, to my buds, I'll be back eventually. Just don't worry, I have to go deal with some stuff and I'll be back, right? And Zoro still does not know every little event that went on in Totland. He still doesn't know everything. He doesn't know the whole story with, like, the Vinsmokes and Pudding's betrayal and eventually with the wedding cake. He doesn't know all of that stuff, right? But, when Nami and Brook were explaining the whole situation to everybody, what happened with Beiji, and, because Beiji announced, like, this is the tea party and you're going to marry Charlotte Pudding and everything, I can't help but think, like, Zoro at that moment, because he was just kind of off to the side just listening to the explanation of why Sanji left, and once again, Zoro was not, like, dancing, like, we got him, we got rid of him, he's gone forever, oh, this is gonna be the best crew ever now. No, he wasn't doing that. He was just sitting there listening to the explanation, and I can't help but think, like, part of Zoro was thinking, like, he better not have left just to chase after that girl, the Pudding. He's like, oh, because Beiji comes out and says, oh, you're going to marry, the 36th, was it 35th or 36th? I think it was 35th daughter of the Charlotte family, Charlotte Pudding. And then Sanji leaves. And I can't help but think Zoro was like, oh, he better not have left just for the sake of, getting a girl. Because if that was the reason why he left, yeah, this is going to be pretty intense when he finally comes back to the crew. I'm not going to deal with that because that's just ridiculous. Now, like I said, he doesn't know the whole story. So if they lay him down and they explain, like, okay, they threatened Zeph at the Baratier and everything, and they had that ready to go, and he had the handcuffs on, and then his family got involved, the whole thing with the Vinsmokes and Judge, and like no, you don't understand, Zoro. Like, he had a whole backstory we found out about with his mom, and his dad was there, and his hot sister. And then Pudding she started off as a huge bunt, but she ended up being kind of cool by the end of it. And then he basically saved an entire country from a rampaging, Godzilla and a moo-moo, like, it was more complicated than what you think. And so if that's the situation, maybe Zoro would be like, all right, I understand, but Sanji, you still need to, like, apologize to the whole crew about what you did. Maybe it might be something like that. I don't know. But we'll see where that leads, but I just wanted to mention it, all right? So anyway, thanks for watching the video. Tomorrow, new chapter release, so we'll see how the Zoro x Sanji pairing continues. Oh man, that's also a thing that exists. In case you're curious, of course it exists. Why wouldn't it exist? I might do that. Might be the fan fiction I read. Who knows? I don't know. We'll see. Some Zoro Sanji love. All right, well, have a great one, everybody. And hashtag TechAid continues. Later tonight, there will be an answer time video answering your questions from last week. And tomorrow, we'll continue the documentary series on the Bleach era of my channel. So thanks to everybody for the 10 years on YouTube. This will be Tekking signing out. Later, everybody. I'm going to try to end the recording with my sword. One sword style. F1.